Well, Joseph, we've heard from Lafarge and Holcim today. They've finally announced the details of their proposed merger. Now, one of the big questions around this is what they'll have to do to get over regulatory concerns and what they'll have to sell in order to get the deal past the competition regulators. So what have they told us today?
Well, they've put forward about €5 billion worth of asset sales. So these are cement plants which are fairly high quality and might actually find a buyer despite quite significant overcapacity in the industry. And now they would have to, because they have about 15 potentially antitrust bodies over this deal, but most prominently and over about 80% of those assets, it would be the EU. And as we know, the EU antitrust body tends to have a rule of thumb that once you get above 40% market share in any particular country, then alarm bells start ringing. So if you look at France, for example, if Holcim and Lafarge combine there without selling assets, they would be easily above 50%. And it's not just about your percentage share of the market. I mean, it can be other things like intensity of competition and so on, but you get a picture of why negotiations here may be a little bit complicated.
So clearly the companies know they're going to have to do something to try and soothe regulators' fears, but what if they have to go further than perhaps they think they'll have to at the moment? Does there come at a stage at which a deal no longer
makes
sense?
There would have to be some point when you're just flinging off assets and the deal no longer becomes viable, really. I mean, it just depends where that is. Possibly if they're selling half their assets in France or elsewhere, then you're just losing billions of euros of revenue and it becomes impossible. However, they may not get to that point because they could argue to EU regulators or to regulators in the US or Canada, where they're also quite prominently positioned, that the asset sales may allow new competition to come in, particularly in Europe. Heidelberg Cement, Cemex, all of these companies, they will have to sort of readjust strategy if this behemoth is created. And the fact that they can pick up assets may be interesting here.
And how about for the companies themselves in the deal? What's the big attraction of it for them? What are they trying to get out of merging?
Yeah, I mean, the ratings agencies are almost as important as antitrust regulators here, because Lafarge famously has been trying for some years now to reattain an investment grade rating after its debt increased in recent years. And Holcim has always maintained that rating throughout the crisis. Now, if rating agencies come back and say, well, the combined group can have an investment grade rating, that leads to immediate financing savings. Lafarge has quite some high cost debt on its balance sheet, so removing that creates value. But more generally, both companies have had huge cost savings programs in the past, almost equivalent to about 7% of combined sales, so this is really quite big. Now, if the merger can actually just guarantee that those existing programs can be carried out, that would be quite good. There are some extra cost savings of about €1 billion on top of that, but it's really just making sure what they've already agreed happens, and that's quite important considering the pressures facing the cement industry.
Sure, so obviously for both of them a big incentive to try and get this deal through, and it looks like in order to achieve that they're going to have to pay an awful lot of money to competition lawyers. Joseph, thank you very much.